Hey guys, in this week's Casually Criterion episode, we're going to talk about Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. But before that, we're going to talk about Schitt's Creek. So, get ready. Hope you got a paddle.
It's funny.
That was a good one, yeah.
It was good.
Welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me as always is the left side, Love. How are you doing today, Mike?
Pretty good. Just trying to keep that right hand at bay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's tough to do. It's really tough to do. Also with me, joined in an eternal battle with Love, is Hate. Justin, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I think if I understand this correctly, I am supposed to be trying to destroy everything in the end.
That's why I'm trying to keep you at bay.
Yeah. So I'm working on it. Haven't done it yet because Mike's pretty good at his job.
Yep.
We just need balance, guys. That's all we need.
Yep. Gonna come together somehow.
If this is your first time listening to the show, this is a Casually Criterion episode, which is a Criterion Collection focused episode that we do every other week, unless there's a pandemic going on, and then we do it more often than every other week, where we review a film from the Criterion Collection that is picked by the listeners. Before we get into the main review, we'll be doing our usual News on the March, where we talk about recent news and things we've been watching. So if you haven't seen the movie, you can keep listening. Then we'll move into our Casually Criterion review for Do the Right Thing, spine number 97. Don't worry, it'll all be time-stamped, so you can just skip around however you want.
That's right. And as Mike said, the listeners pick our Criterion films that we review on our Casually Criterion episodes. And if you want to vote in the polls, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. The polls are on our Twitter, but we post about them on Facebook and whatnot. You can also send us your questions about the movies we're discussing each week to any of those social media accounts or to casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And of course, if you haven't done so already, do the right thing and go onto iTunes and give us a 5-star review. It'll help other people find the show. Let them know that you like it and that we're a show worth listening to.
And by the way, I forgot to mention, stay tuned after the review, where we'll actually be discussing each of our picks for the next Casually Criterion episode. After this, the poll will be up, and well, anyway, we'll talk about it later. But join us for that.
Yeah.
And with that, I think we are ready to move into News on the March. Is that right?
That is right.
It certainly is.
News on the March!
So, Justin.
Hi.
I believe you're the only one that's been doing anything of note lately.
Yeah, I suppose so. If you want to call watching a TV show on Netflix and sitting on my couch something of note, then yeah, I feel pretty accomplished. Because Nicole, my fiance, and I, we have been absolutely tearing through a show called Schitt's Creek.
Language. We don't have the explicit label on our podcast.
Oh, that's true, but this is spelled capital S Schitt''. This is the last name of a family. I guess the family who runs the town. Yeah. So it is Schitt's Creek. I don't know how to say it. It doesn't sound like the swear word.
I've actually seen the first 2 episodes of this on Netflix.
Yeah.
I didn't keep going with it because although the first 2 episodes weren't bad, they didn't particularly engage me.
Right. So I have a similar story. Chris, have you seen it before I go into my story?
I think I've just seen the first episode. Somewhat similar. Like, there's other things to watch, and so I've always just been distracted from Schitt's Creek.
Yeah.
But I've heard lots of good stuff.
Yeah, it just based on the first episode, I was getting like poor man's Arrested Development vibes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of accurate. It's not quite trying to be the same thing that Arrested Development was. It's just similar in storyline because you essentially have a very wealthy family who loses all of their money and has to live in this town called Schitt's Creek, which is a town that the patriarch of the family, played by Eugene Levy, bought his son, who is played by Eugene Levy's son, David, or Daniel, David's character's name, but he bought his son a town as a joke for the birthday, and he bought Schitt's Creek. So basically, Schitt's Creek is the only town or thing that they own. So they go to live in this town once they've lost all their money. That's a very similar, like, to Arrested Development sort of storyline, right?
Yeah. Everything got changed, and the rich people have to band together.
Yeah.
and a life that they're not comfortable with, and hilarity will ensue.
Yeah, and it's definitely not quite trying to be the same type of humor that Arrested Development is to me. I think it's not nearly as like clever, and it's not nearly full of recurring jokes. It's a bit more of a normal, like modern sitcom in that way, but I find it to be really good. I find the characters to have grown on me because I had a very similar experience to both of you guys, or at least you, Mike, because I did watch like the first 2 episodes one time, and I was like, it's okay. Not really for me. And so I wrote it off for a long time, but then I was listening to another podcast. I don't know which podcast it was, but I think the show recently just had its series finale. And they were talking about how great it's gotten. And it seemed like everybody was suddenly talking about Schitt's Creek when nobody was talking about it before. And I had heard a lot of good things. So basically, I decided to give it another go. And now I've kind of fallen in love with the show. I think it's really good and really funny. And all the characters who I wasn't sure I was going to like based on the first couple of episodes, I ended up finding them kind of endearing and liking them.
Yeah, I didn't really like either of the children. Not children, but they're the kids of the rich couple.
Sure, yeah. I think they kind of come into their own, and I enjoy them. I enjoy the arcs that they go through. Like they're kind of slowly over time changing, as sitcom characters tend to slowly do. But in a way that I find them more and more likable as the show is going on. And I generally find Eugene Levy and is it Catherine O'Hare? That's her name, right? Is it Catherine O'Hare or Catherine O'Hara?
I always heard Hera.
I think it's O'Hara, actually.
O'Hare's an airport.
Yeah. And there was a video game called Bucky O'Hare.
There's a cartoon called Bucky O'Hare.
Oh, was the video game based on the cartoon?
I assume so, with like the rabbit, with like a space rabbit or something.
Yes. Cool. Well, that tangent has given me enough time to Google and confirm that it is Catherine O'Hara. But yeah.
But now you should Google and confirm, what year did Bucky O'Hare air? And is the video game based on the cartoon or vice versa?
We don't have time for that, even though we could edit and make time whatever we want it to be.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay.
Okay. Anyways, I like Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara a lot. I really enjoy them in their the Christopher Guest movies that they're in, things like Best in Show and Waiting for Guffman. They kind of have a natural chemistry that I think is what kind of helped me latch onto the show initially, and I enjoy watching them. So I think if you're fans of them and like their sort of type of humor that they have, even in the sort of like improv style of Christopher Guest's movies, right? Like some of that like sense of humor and that sense of comedic timing still carries over, I think. And I think Catherine O'Hara is like really, really great. She's like a dialed up to 10 version of like a mix between, not to bring back Arrested Development too much because the show's not as good as Arrested Development, but Lucille Bluth and Lindsay Bluth.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like to me.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm curious to see if the show just continues to get better and better, because that's kind of what I had heard based on.
Well, where are you at right now? There's 6 seasons total and it just ended. So where are you at?
I'm close to we were close to the end of season 3, but we watched more last night. So now we are at the beginning of season 4. So we're getting close to the end. But I don't know. I think that you guys would probably like it if you gave it a chance. Maybe Chris more than Mike.
Well, gee.
That's just a guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's certainly something that's been on my radar, and I haven't really had an excuse to watch it. But I think, Justin, you just gave me the best excuse, and that's a recommendation. So I think I'll have to try this.
Yeah, well, and I think I'll report back on overall thoughts on the show once I finish all 6 seasons. I probably won't talk about it much until then, unless you guys happen to watch it and want to talk about it. But I'll report back when it's all said and done. But so far, it's just been on an uphill climb, and I've been enjoying it more and more.
Awesome. That's really good to hear.
Yeah, I like a good sitcom, and I don't know how you guys...
I like a show that knows when to end, and it seems like they did.
Yeah, I think so, because the way that we're going, like the momentum that we have going into season 4, feels like, not like they're rounding it up, but it feels like they can't continue to do this indefinitely. Like it feels like it's rounding to go somewhere, as opposed to just feeling like we're just going through the same loop every episode. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That alone makes it a sitcom worth looking into, because most sitcoms their goal is to just keep going indefinitely as long as they can. So the idea that a show like ended when it was on like just hitting its like peak popularity and then seems to have been well received. I can't think of many sitcoms that do that. Even like some of the best received sitcoms don't end with as high a praise as this show did.
Yeah, I remember when we were in our screenwriting class and we talked about television writing, the professor who had written stuff for TV was talking about how the goal in a sitcom is to almost get your character to change, but by the end of the episode, have them
revert them back.
Yeah, they need to end back in the same places they started as in terms of being a character. Mm-hmm. So I think we're moving away from that, maybe generally, that sort of like concept, you know?
The concept of like being able to hop in at any episode and kind of get the dynamic and not need to know anything that came before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I definitely think
that's not how people watch things this day and age.
No, and I think Schitt's Creek doesn't do that. So, among other things.
That's probably the best thing streaming has done is made it so things can be long form stories as opposed to, you know, like just the same thing over and over again, like, you know, Friends or stuff like that.
Yeah, like Seinfeld. Like, I think Seinfeld's like the best example of that, but even when that show ended, it was really controversial in its ending. Do you guys remember that?
Yep.
Seinfeld?
Yeah.
I don't, and I have no idea how the show ends, so don't spoil it. We're actually...
Really?
Yeah, we're watching through Seinfeld right now. We're like halfway through season 6.
Wow, that's crazy. That's like one of the famous endings of a television show. That's like not knowing how The Sopranos ends.
Well, I don't know how Seinfeld ends, so... And I'm genuinely,
it's the same way as
know.
The Sopranos.
Well, it made everyone mad.
Is it the same as Sopranos? Is that what you said, Chris?
Yeah, same as Sopranos.
Okay.
Sorry to spoil it for you.
That's cool. I guess it's better than is Bob Newhart? That's like the other famous famous TV show.
The Bob Newhart show is so Newhart is the one with the bad ending. Like, just Newhart. And the ending to that show, spoilers, is he wakes up in the set of the Bob Newhart show, which was on earlier and canceled years before, with the same actress who played his wife in that show. And so like the entire Newhart sitcom was a dream of Bob Newhart in the Bob Newhart show.
It was all a dream. Classic.
It was very, very meta.
Yeah, I remember that. I saw that. Not live, obviously, because it was on Nick at Night whenever I was a kid. But
right, yeah.
I remember seeing it and being like, what the heck?
Yeah, well, now I have like some renewed vigor to get back into Seinfeld and get closer to the end, because I did not know the ending of that show had any strong opinions about it, but apparently it does.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, I can't imagine that you would probably have strong opinions, but maybe you would. But you know how people are.
Yeah, I doubt I will. I'm coming from the land of loving the ending of Lost, and you know, most people don't. Oh well.
No, they don't.
Oh, the one other thing I wanted to mention about Schitt's Creek is my favorite thing in the show, or one of my favorite things, is Catherine O'Hara's accent in the show. I don't know how much they get into that in the first couple of episodes that you guys have seen, but I don't remember it. She's a former television like soap opera actress is what she's famous for. And she goes in and out of this sort of like, you can tell she's putting it on, so almost like transatlantic accent, but it only comes out here and there because it's clearly like for show, you know, part of her bigger than life personality. So she just pronounces random words at weird times in just like the weirdest way, like words that are very simply pronounced. She'll throw in like this crazy transatlantic accent on it that makes no sense. And
give me an example, because I don't know what a transatlantic accent sounds like.
Transatlantic is like Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant and like those like that old school like pseudo-American British. Yeah, it's like halfway between American and British. Yeah. I can't possibly do a Cary Grant impression.
Yeah. Well, just do your best transatlantic accent impression.
Oh man, I'm trying to channel.
Like, what do you hear? What do you say? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Like,
looky here, kid.
No, that's like mobster. That's like
yeah. It's hard to like describe, but the most recent example I can think of is BB, who plays Frasier's agent in Frasier. She is super transatlantic. I don't
remember that character.
The pig reporter in BoJack Horseman.
Oh yeah,
It's transatlantic, like who comes in like she's like the newspaper reporter woman. That's basically like the His Girl Friday plot inserted into BoJack. She's super transatlantic.
That's a weird term.
It is. But anyways, regardless of whatever, just Catherine O'Hara has this crazy accent that she busts out like only on certain words within her sentence here and there. And it's super entertaining to just see what she butchers next, like what word she butchers. It's funny. But yeah, I'll leave Schitt's Creek there unless you guys want to know anything else about it.
How many episodes per season are they?
10. No, 12.
Okay, I was like, a sitcom with only 10 episodes a season? What kind of sitcom is that?
I think actually some of them are 13 and some of them are 12. I think the later seasons are 12 and the first couple are 13 or something like that.
I think that's like the new standard, 12 to 13 episodes for sitcoms these days.
Yeah. It works out. It feels good. Like just when you're getting kind of used to the things that are going on in like each season, they'll come to the end of a season and like change things up and bigger things will happen to kind of change everything up for the next season.
Okay, so, keeps it from getting stale.
Yeah, I like it.
Anyone have anything else they want to talk about in News on the March?
Not me.
Okay. Then I guess we'll just keep it short and go ahead and move into our review of Do the Right Thing. What do you say?
Yes.
Let's do the right thing and do it.
I already made that joke, Chris.
I did a new iteration of it, sir.
Did you? Did you?
It was hilarious the second time. All right. Do the Right Thing. Spy number 97. Here we go.
Ooh-wee. It's gonna be a scorcher today.
Universal Pictures presents a new film from Spike Lee.
Good morning, Miss Mother Sister.
Now, Mookie, don't work too hard today. The man says it's gonna be hot as the devil.
I've been here 25 years. The South's famous pizzeria is here to stay.
Trust me.
Mookie, the last time I trusted you, we ended up with a son.
I know you can't stand it. You can't stand it.
Hey, Sal, how we gonna brothers from the wall here?
You want brothers on the wall?
Love.
Get your own place. You can do what you want to do.
What I tell you about that noise? What I tell you about them pictures?
You talk to him, brother, talk to him.
You the man. No, you the man.
No, you the man.
No, you the man.
The first time you turn your back, boom. Right here, man, in the back.
Y'all take a chill. You'd like to sign a petition to boycott Sal's famous pizzeria?
Hear me, what you ought to do is boycott that no-good barber that messed up your head.
And that's the double truth. Rude.
Fight the power. Fight the power.
You know, deep down inside, I think you wish you were black.
Who told you to step on my sneakers? Who told you to walk on my side of the block? Who told you to be in my neighborhood?
I own this brownstone.
Who told you to buy a brownstone on my block, in my neighborhood, on my side of the street?
I can't even hear myself think.
From Spike Lee, director of School Days and She's Gotta Have It.
Good people, please. If we don't stop this, and stop it now, we're gonna do something we're gonna regret for the rest of our lives. Doctor?
Come on, what?
Always do the right thing.
That's it?
That's it.
I got it. I'm gone.
Okay, so as always with our Criterion films, they're typically older films that have been out for a while, so we will not be doing our usual spoiler-free section where we talk generally about the film. We will be going straight into spoilers and giving away plot details and that sort of thing. So if you have not seen Do the Right Thing, pause this episode, go watch Do the Right Thing, and then come back and finish listening to it so that you don't get any of the details spoiled.
That's right. So, Do the Right Thing was directed by Spike Lee, starring Danny Aiello, Spike Lee, Giancarlo Esposito, Ossie David, Ruby Dee, and John Turturro. IMDb synopsis says, on the hottest day of the year, on a street in the Bedford Stuyvesant section of Brooklyn, everyone's hate and bigotry smolders and builds until it explodes into violence. I think there was more than one day involved in this, but whatever.
Yeah, barely. Barely, but the main chunk of the film happens on a single day. And the biggest stuff all happens within a 24-hour period. And I will say that one thing missing from the cast list was the weather and the heat in this movie, because that's kind of a real important character, as the synopsis points out, you know?
Indeed. So, Justin, I believe this was your pick, right?
That it was, because I had never seen it before.
You won the poll. This was your blind spot, so why don't you get us started, unless you would like one of us to do it?
No, I can totally get us started.
Okay. And just real quick, I just want to lead off. I'm interested because I know that you are not traditionally the biggest Spike Lee fan.
Not traditionally. I will say that as we were going into this episode, I had a couple people who listen, talk to me and message me, and who are very aware of my opinion of Black Klansman, which I'm not a big fan of, and they were fans of it. So they were like talking to me about this film and about Spike Lee in general. And I was actually listing out like what Spike Lee movies I had seen, and I realized that I liked half of the Spike Lee movies I'd seen, and I didn't like half of them that I hadn't seen, which isn't a lot. I'd only seen 4, which the 2 films that I liked by Spike Lee previously were 25th Hour and Summer of Sam. And then the 2 that I didn't like were The Miracle at St. Anna, which I think a lot of people don't like that movie. That one's not just me. And then Black Klansman. So I was kind of split down the middle more than I thought I was.
Okay.
Just for what it's worth.
Actually, that makes me feel better because I've always wondered why you had such strong opinions on Spike Lee, because I thought you had liked 25th Hour. And at least, and I didn't know what other ones you'd seen other than Miracle at St. Anna. I know you didn't like that.
Yeah, well, I forgot that 25th Hour was Spike Lee. It was only when I was going through his thing, I was like, oh yeah, 25th Hour, that was good. I'd always remember Summer of Sam as being the movie I liked of his, and then of course I saw both of those before I ever watched Miracle at St. Anna, which again I did not like at all. And then Black Klansman, of course, we have a whole episode where I rant about not liking that movie. But we can move on to Do the Right Thing. That's kind of the setup on where I was on Spike Lee, and I will keep it very brief so that I don't have to like pause from gushing about this movie any longer, because I really like this movie a lot. I think I super get why Spike Lee is who he is based on this movie and why he's got the acclaim, because I think this movie is fantastic. Because even in the time that I watched the movie to now, the movie has gone up like a whole half star in my head from where I was when I initially ended watching it. Like when I ended up watching it, I was like, hey, that was really good. I liked it a lot. And I went to Letterboxd and I gave it a 4 out of 5 star rating. And then having sat on it for like a day, because I watched it yesterday, probably about 5 o'clock this afternoon, I went back to Letterboxd and said, you know what, this movie deserves 4.5 stars, because I am just thinking back on it and I am loving everything about it. I can't think of anything that I didn't like in the movie. It's all just like completely working. As I mentioned earlier, like the heat is such an important thing and like so well done, where you like feel the heat, much like a couple weeks ago we talked about Akira Kurosawa's Stray Dog and how the heat was this other character, this other element of tension in the film that works really well and Do the Right Thing. I love the colors. I love this like late 80s, early 90s, like everybody in colorful clothes vibe that this movie captures. Like it's a vibe I like in general. Like I really like movies from the 90s that have that sort of thing. I like that this story isn't as one-sided as the Spike Lee films that I have not liked, Miracle at St. Anna and Black Klansman. Like they seem to be a little bit more like Spike Lee has drawn his lines in the sand. He knows how he feels, and this is his opinion that he is going to preach at you. Whereas Do the Right Thing, I feel like I'm watching Spike Lee, both as a director and as a main character in this movie, come to terms with like the racism around him and the mixed messages from, Black icons like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Like the end of this movie kind of gives 2 quotes, one from Malcolm X, one from Martin Luther King, that kind of set up opposing views of how, I guess those quotes are probably targeted towards Black people, how they should handle like bigotry and racism, and should they be violent? Is violence the answer? But I really love seeing him kind of struggle with that and try to balance those and like piece together everything going on in this neighborhood around him, because in this story, everybody's racist to some degree, right? And everybody has problems with the other people who aren't their own kind in their neighborhood. And to me, that feels a lot more accessible, I think, and it actually feels really honest and vulnerable, which I don't get from some of the more recent Spike Lee movies. And so I thought it all really worked for me. Just this message of how do you balance all of this stuff in your life? What is the right thing to do? That's kind of the question of the movie to me. And I'm sure we'll get into it. But even like Spike Lee's characters, I'm not sure that he, Mookie is his name in the movie, I'm not sure that he does all of the right things. And I think that some of the things that he does is out of confusion and emotion in the moment. And I think that's like the question is like, what is the right thing? And I like seeing Spike Lee with a question as opposed to telling me what's what. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I agree with you. I think that this is his best movie that I've seen, hands down. Although I disagree that having a specific point of view that he's kind of preaching at you is a bad thing in Black Klansman, because I don't want more nuance from the people that he's vilifying in that movie. The people he's vilifying deserve to be vilified, and I don't necessarily want I don't want Do the Right Thing out of Black Klansman. They're doing different things, I guess. But that said, I agree with you. I think this is a better movie, and I enjoyed this approach to handling racism because this is like a thinking man's movie, whereas the other one's more of almost like a horror film disguised as a comedy.
Yeah, I don't want the nuance of the Klansman either, just for clarity. I think what it is it just like that approach to discussing racism, I think, and that sort of thing is basically, it's like not going to work very well for anybody who isn't already on your side, whereas I think this movie is more nuanced.
I also think it speaks to the time in which he made it, too. I think he was very angry, and you can tell that in Black Klansman, and that's why there's not nuance to it, where there is in this one, too, I think.
Yeah, different political environments for sure.
Yeah.
But are you done with your thoughts?
I was gonna pass it off. Like, we're already there, so go ahead and give me your thoughts, Mike.
Cool. So this is my second time to see it. The first time I saw it was many years ago, like well over a decade ago, maybe a decade and a half. I don't quite remember. I know that whenever I first saw it, I wasn't paying attention to the world around me as much, right? So I don't know if I was ready to absorb this movie the way it needs to be. But since then, I don't know, I guess I've been exposed to a lot of news and a lot of sad stuff in the world, but this movie hit me like a ton of bricks this time.
Yeah.
It is so relevant to today. Everything they discuss, I mean, it's still in conversation. It'll never not be in conversation, right? Because that's just human nature, and people are terrible to each other. But you're right. I don't think I've ever seen another Spike Lee movie that's firing on all cylinders like this, where he's interested, or he's wanting to open a dialogue here. And it seems like that's what this movie is designed to do. He gives you scenes where you understand every character's motivations for the most part, their points of view. Everyone has redeeming qualities and irredeemable.
Yeah, irredeemable.
Yeah,
there we go. I don't know why I was struggling with that. But, just the relationship between Mookie and Sal, fascinating. The racial politics going on here are just so sharp and intelligent. He really puts a lot of thought into understanding everyone's point of view. But at the end of the movie, ultimately, only one of those quotes is the last quote of the movie.
That's a good point.
And I think it's very important to determine which one was left last. That's the last word of the movie.
Yeah, which is the Malcolm X quote, right?
Correct. Yes.
That doesn't encourage violence necessarily, as say that violence is sometimes necessary.
You can't take it off the table.
Violence in defense is good, is what I took from the quote.
Yeah, so okay. I'll keep my opening thoughts brief right here, and we'll just kind of get into the meat of the story here. But Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you, Mike. I saw this a long time ago, and it didn't have the impact that it did on me now, and who knows why that is. Maybe I wasn't in tune. It's kind of shameful that it didn't have the impact on me when I first watched it.
Yeah, full disclosure, you and I are white guys who kind of grew up sheltered, not necessarily sheltered, but like in a smaller town.
Yeah. So yeah, it is kind of shameful to a certain extent. But one thing I will, and this is kind of a little bit of a side note, I just recently did a podcast on cinemas. I guested on that podcast, and our movie was Night of the Hunter. And I just randomly picked it way before we were going to do the right thing. And it couldn't have been more perfect because in Do the Right Thing, in both movies, there's a love and hate on the knuckles. And then basically in Do the Right Thing, he lifts the speech from Night of the Hunter, almost exactly, about the hands battling it out, love fighting hate and overcoming it. And it's really fascinating to see that, like so closely together, because the meaning is so completely different in this movie, and really so much more meaningful in this, because that's kind of what I've been thinking about since I watched the movie is, like, it feels like all these people both love and hate each other, like all these different groups, and they're constantly wrestling, though. Like, it's like always on edge, like something could always happen. They're always going, like to the edge of fighting and then backing back down. And that's just kind of the way they talk to each other. And then, I don't know. It's really interesting. I think Sal and Mookie's relationship is maybe one of the most fascinating. Sal especially is one of the most fascinating characters, and Mookie really too. But that relationship together is maybe one of the most fascinating like duos in cinema. You know, like and especially about racism because it's layered and it's nuanced and it's hard to come away with an answer. Does that make sense? And I think that that's what's great about this movie is that it makes you ask questions and makes you ponder like these themes that are going on in this movie.
I mean, it all goes back to the title, Do the Right Thing. But as like 30 minutes into the movie, it becomes painfully obvious that there is no right thing.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, like people are way too complicated. This situation is way too complex for anything to be right. And then right by whose standards? What's the right thing for Mookie? What's the right thing for Sal? Is it the same right thing?
Yeah, for sure. And just to kind of round out my thoughts, just to finish it up, but like all the characters in this are so great. It's, you know, like anytime there's a town or a village that we visit in a movie, I always think of like Armacord, which is, you know, one of our first movies that we did, but it feels like that. It feels like a community. Mm-hmm. And that's really like one of the best things you can do in a movie is like, especially a movie with, you know, the kaleidoscope of characters that we have here. That you feel like they all gel together and they all fit together, you know, whether it's Samuel L. Jackson doing the radio or, you know, Mookie or Mookie's girlfriend, they all fit together and they all interact and have show up in all the other people's scenes. And it's great. I love it. I think it's really great. So yeah, those are my thoughts. And this is going to be a good conversation. I feel like
you've set us up now. It must be.
Yeah.
I hope it is.
But yeah, that's a totally good call. Like, the Fellini Armacord thing, I definitely had the same thought. It's very colorful, like Armacord is and Fellini's color movies are. So that's definitely like that influence stuck out to me. And also, I think there's a lot of sort of like French New Wave Godard influence on this movie with the sort of like noticeable, intentional like camera work and breaking the fourth wall / like looking into the camera. Maybe they don't break the fourth wall as much as like look into the camera, and the camera switches from like seeing a character to being that character's point of view without cutting, which is a really interesting sort of ballsy thing to do.
Yeah. Do you guys remember the like the kiss scene? That's like there's like literally 2 takes of the kiss.
Yeah.
Back to back, I think, and then I think it's the same scene whenever they do like the water, the ice cube.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's like melting the ice cube all over her, which I really love that scene, by the way, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, lots of like flourishes that are just kind of like, why did you do that?
Yeah. I think like there's a good amount of, you know, camera movements that remind me of, is it Vivre sa vie that has that scene with Anna Karenina where the camera just pans like 360 degrees while 2 people are having a conversation?
Yeah, like in the record store?
In the record store?
Yeah.
No, it's not Jules and Jim. Pretty sure it's Godard for sure. But there were a lot of things that reminded me of that in this. There's, of course, like the bright red wall that like the sort of 3 guys who are out there gossiping and like talking smack to each other all day. Mm-hmm. Like, they're in a bright red wall, which is very Godardish, I think. And yeah, there's a lot of like influence on this movie. Like you could tell that like he knows this film and his film history and stuff. Even with the Night of the Hunter references that you talked about, Chris. But it's awesome to see them come together in this movie and create something so unique and not feel like just copying.
Derivative. Yeah.
Yeah. And and just to come out with something so unique and so like energetic while still having such obvious influences from film. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. So let me ask you guys, what is your opinion on Mookie, just as a character?
Like, do we like him or what do we think?
Well, so here's my thing. Like, what is his journey, I guess? Because he kind of starts the movie out as being kind of the audience surrogate. He's the most like in the middle of the road. He kind of sees both points of view. But at the same time, it's like he doesn't seem to really want to work hard. He doesn't seem to be a good dad or a good boyfriend. I mean, what does his character learn through the course of the movie? Does he learn to be a better person? Does he learn anything? Is that the point? Because Mookie is a character that I know has been discussed a lot about this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I find him interesting. I do think that he is a bit of a blank slate in some scenes, and at least for a while in the movie, because as you said, he is the audience surrogate. And I think most of the times when we talk about earlier, the camera becomes like the character's point of view. That tends to be Mookie. Mm-hmm. If I'm not mistaken. Granted, I've only seen it once, so I don't know for sure. I may be wrong about that, but I think it's usually Mookie. if not always Mookie. And yeah, I think that he is very much like in between, like you said, but also kind of just soaking up the world around him. I think he's young. I don't think he knows like where he belongs or what side of the fence he needs to fall on. I don't think he knows what the right thing is or where he needs to be. I don't think he's figured any of that out. So I see him as sort of a drifter.
Yeah.
Just kind of drifting through and getting money, getting paid. And that's kind of his character for most of the movie until he decides to, act in a moment of high emotion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, he's not a super likable character because he doesn't seem to have a strong work ethic, and he isn't really seeming to be there for his kid.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I think the moment, there's the moment early on with Giancarlo Esposito's character. What was his name?
Bugging Out.
Yeah, Bugging Out. Where he walks him out, and he's like, when Bugging Out's all upset about there not being any black faces on the wall, and he's trying to help, and he's mediating both sides essentially in that moment. And so maybe that's what this movie is like, he's always walked that fence, and at some point he has to choose a side, which is interesting, I think, as well.
Yeah, what do you think, Mike? Anything to add?
Well, I don't know. It's hard for me to place how I feel about him because he is our audience surrogate, and you go through this journey with him and you see how he's treated and the things he observes. I guess it's just a really hard to pin down performance from Spike Lee. I think it's actually a really good performance.
Yeah, agreed.
He's both sympathetic and also, not, like I said, he's not a good father. He's not a good boyfriend. Those are the aspects of his personality that really I have a hard time reconciling with. But then again, he's also not supposed to be a hero, so I don't need to reconcile them per se.
Yeah, maybe it's interesting because he deserves to be like when he goes and takes a shower when he's supposed to be delivering pizza. So when he comes back, he deserves to be reprimanded, right? But then oftentimes he'll get reprimanded by Danny Aiello's character, and it's not racially charged necessarily. But then John Turturro's character will come in and add like a bunch of shit onto it, and so he doesn't deserve
dynamic
it to go
I actually want to talk about more here in a minute.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No. Anyways, so I feel like he deserves to be reprimanded for being gone, but he doesn't deserve that extra step that he gets, right? And that,
yeah.
And so that's kind of how it's interesting. It's a fine line to walk too, I think.
Well, that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah.
You want to see him, I don't want to say get his comeuppance, but like have negative things. But the second it becomes like racially motivated, it's like, okay, nope. now I feel like he doesn't deserve this. So it's
now he's just putting up with some shit he doesn't deserve to have to put up with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Which I think is totally the point.
Yeah. So Sal and Pino, John Turturro's character.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed their conversations where throughout the movie, you'll hear John Turturro basically be like, let's get out of this neighborhood. Let's sell this place. Let's go. We don't belong here. And you'll have Sal basically just trying to like talk him out of this state of mind, right? Or like try to be less angry, be less hateful. I don't know. I enjoy how beautifully painted it is, where it's like John Turturro, he's angry because he had to grow up here. He's angry because he grew up in a neighborhood where he doesn't feel at home. He doesn't feel safe. He feels like an outsider.
The people that are his friends, that are like him, all laugh at him. I think that's a really great scene. That one scene, it's like kind of like one long take, and they're talking about that. It's a really great scene, and I also think like that gives that extra layer to Danny Aiello's character because Sal, he loves this place, and it feels like he loves the people that he's watched grow up or that he's watched grow old, and he feels an ownership of this place, but it just makes it really interesting and layered. And then whereas like Pino doesn't have, he hates it, and the thing is that Sal allows Pino to have these angry outbursts, and then he just kind of covers it up with money. Like Sal really should be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like calm down.
You're actively ruining our relationship with our clientele.
Yeah. And Sal just kind of by allowing that to happen is kind of complicit in it. And then he just goes and like he's yelling at the one guy that's always trying to sell photographs, and he just goes out and like gives him money to try to cover it up. So, and he's like, you've gone too far, like he doesn't, there's no consequences for Pino or Sal, in those situations. And I think that that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And their conversations, I think, sets up one of the most interesting sort of themes for the movie for me, or one of the things I've been thinking about is this sort of like give and take relationship where I think, maybe their customer base and being in this neighborhood isn't great for them because there is some like racial tension between these like white Italian guys in this black neighborhood. But at the same time, Sal makes the comment of like, they grow up on my food, right? Like these kids grow up and the old people get older, and it's me feeding them and providing for them. And I feel really good about that. But at the same time, that like that conflict between them ends up boiling over, by the end of the movie. And so it's this sort of same thing with the Korean grocery sort of store bodega thing. The three guys that are in front of the red wall are like talking about how they're coming over here and they've got his own business and it's only been like a year or two or whatever. And they kind of have this dislike towards Korean people or Asians in general. But at the same time, everybody goes to that store to buy like cigarettes or to buy alcohol and stuff. So it's like, I just love that balance and that dynamic of like, we rely on each other, even though there are these times that we don't like each other. It's that sort of love-hate balance. And I think that really comes out between Sal and Pino talking.
Well, that love-hate balance, that's a theme that runs through lots of pretty much every relationship, it seems like. Even the locals' relationship with Sal's Pizza, right? Like, they grew up on it. They seem to like it. They love it. They're not angry on their surface at Sal, but there's something underneath it that Bugging Out is putting voice to, right? Like, what's with all these what's with all these like white people on the wall? Why don't, like, pretty much the only people that spend any money here are all, like, black. Why don't you have some African Americans on the wall? And, to which Sal doesn't want to because it's his business, right? But they grew up in this neighborhood. They grew up there. This is supposedly their food that they can grow up on, where they should feel at home, but they don't. They feel less than, even in the restaurant, right? There's no representation to them. They're met with hostility from the sons. Sometimes Sal is even a little creepy or talks down even when he doesn't mean to.
Yeah. Well, he's creepy with Mookie's sister, right?
Right. And who knows who else, right? Like young local girls, at least that one. It's like being raised on food by the dude that you suspect deep down might be racist.
Or might not like you, yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, that's got to eat at you after a while.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
For sure. And I mean, maybe this is a controversial question, but where do you side? I mean, not that you have to pick a side, I guess, but how do you view Bugging Out and Radio Raheem in this movie, who decide to boycott Sal's, and they go in there kind of all fired up, ready for conflict,
Right. Yeah. So that's interesting. Radio Raheem for sure, because he gives the whole love and hate speech and how love needs to like conquer all. But then he goes around immediately like yelling at the Koreans and yelling at everybody. Like he's very much starting the conflict a lot of times. He's angry. He's angry at like what's going on. Like Spike Lee said that, the end of this movie and Radio Raheem's murder was inspired by Michael Stewart, who was strangled by the police in 1983. Which is what inspired this movie. So, they mentioned Michael Stewart and they mentioned someone else as some of the famous crimes that the NYPD have done throughout the 80s at the end of the movie when the riot's going on,
Yeah.
So I think he's angry at the same thing that everyone's angry about at the end of the movie. But he's still angry about it because he's young. He's got that piss and vinegar in him. You know what I mean? Young people are angry. That's just kind of...
Yeah, it's also, like, the conflict at the end, I think, is a result of the heat and people being mad and like underlayers of racism, right?
Right. Well, it's like all the crimes that the NYPD have been doing to black people throughout the years. They are very much aware of in this neighborhood. They think about those all the time.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing that like sparks the riot part of it, or like that's the death, like if I guess if we're there. So like, I think the conflict in Sal's is like a natural occurrence. It's how the police and everybody else respond to it that cause it to be much worse than just a conflict of people losing their tempers, like in a pizzeria. Because I think the police responding to it, they don't even like talk to Sal or his sons, but they murder one guy and arrest another one. They arrest Bugging Out and they murder Raheem. And that's where like things have gone too far. And at that point, that's when you riot. Like that's the second quote at the end of the movie is the Malcolm X one. Like in defense, you need violence. Like is kind of how I took that. Like, and I think on both sides of that original conflict, both sides are sort of at fault there. It escalates and escalates.
Right. It's like the anger is there the whole time. Yeah. And what starts out as like, harmless youth rebellion, walking around with a ghetto blaster, being angry, not turning it down when they tell you to, sticking it to the man. Like those are all pretty relatively harmless rebellions.
Yeah.
Like they're annoying, sure, but nothing inherently wrong with them. Bugging Out even, like Bugging Out's not blasting the ghetto blaster everywhere, but he is, up in everyone's face. He's yelling at shop owners, telling them to like...
Yeah, he's had a bad day,
Yeah, it seems like these are all like, relatively minor things. Like you said, it's just the perfect storm of like the heat, the NYPD, the tension that they kind of feel within their own neighborhood, not feeling safe within their own neighborhood. All of these things kind of combining together just to make one perfect storm of hate, I guess.
Yeah, it's a boiling pot, or it's a boiling melting pot, right? Like the heat is boiling that melting pot of a little neighborhood where you have Puerto Ricans, black people, white Italian guys.
Oh, you even have
Koreans.
Young urban like yuppie types coming in and bicycling, signaling gentrification that is to come.
Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah,
which really rubs Bugging Out the wrong way.
It does. Well, he smudges his sneaker. Like his new Jordans, man. That's
new Jordans.
That's not cool.
Might as well throw them away.
Yeah, that's right. If anybody in this movie doesn't necessarily get a fair shake or a nuanced opinion, it is the NYPD and the police. I think they're pretty... Well, maybe they do get a bit nuanced because they... Like the guy who comes through with the Cadillac or convertible, like retro car, whatever it is, and he gets squirted with like the fire hydrant. The police don't really side with the white guy, and like they don't arrest somebody. They're like, hey, who did it? What's their names? But
they do certainly give racism. They're like, you better like take off before they just steal everything. Like they're just going to steal everything from your car. Like it felt,
and they have like these sort of like evil toned shots to them at one point when they're just driving by the cops in the car. And then of course the end of the movie. But I think if anybody's like just kind of painted in a bad light overall without any nuance, it is the police.
Sure, but I think that's very intentional, right? That's the same as like the racist and Black Klansmen, where it's like that's a demographic that, agree or disagree, Spike Lee does not deem them to deserve nuance.
Yeah.
And that's probably because this movie is very much a response to, Michael Stewart's murder. Mm-hmm. By the way, shortly after this, I think it was like 3 years later, Rodney King happened. The Rodney King beatings.
Yeah. Well, it's still happening, right?
Yeah, it's still happening, but that's like the most famous, because of the LA riots and whatnot. So I was like, this finger was very much on the pulse of things, or this movie's finger was very much on the pulse of things.
Yeah,
still is.
Yeah, while we're at the end in that scene, I do think we have to ask the question, or at least I want to know what you guys' takes are of why does Mookie throw the trash can through the window? Why is he the one to, be the spark on the fire, so to speak?
It's funny. I'll answer that here in a minute, but I was actually like watching some videos on this, and Spike Lee basically said that in 20 or 30 years, whenever the interview was, he's like, in 20, 30 years, no black person has ever asked me that question. It's only ever been white people. So I think that's funny.
Yeah.
But short story is he was pissed. It's like, he sees what is essentially a murder that he knows they're going to get away with. It's happened before. It'll happen again. It's happened in his own neighborhood. You got to do something, I mean,
I think to be fair, like, he is the least fired up person up until that point.
Right. Well, but it's under the surface though. I think there's enough nuance in his performance to where if you go back, because I was looking for it this time, he's angry. It's just he doesn't get in people's faces like Bugging Out does or like Radio Raheem does.
Yeah.
He keeps it to himself. He complains. He'll argue with you. Like Sal, he's like, man, I need you to stay away from my sister. And then they just get in an argument about it. But like, that's his approach, right? Is he'll argue, he'll beg, he'll plead for you to just chill out for a second. Like, stop making a fuss. Let me just get by, but not at the end. None of that matters anymore because he's had enough.
It's too much, yeah.
It's a bridge too far.
Yeah. For me, the reason he throws it through the window, it is too much. But the thing that aggravated me the most when I watched it, and I'm certainly don't know that perspective, except for through, media and books and stuff like that. That's the only way I'll ever get this perspective, right? Was the fact that like Raheem got murdered and Sal and the two boys who were also fighting, and also were just as much a part of that fight as Raheem or bugging out, are just standing there. And that's too much. Like,
yeah, they don't even have the good decency to look horrified by what's going on or offer any protests to like the police.
To the police, they didn't,
they weren't like, hey, it's over. Don't do that.
I don't. And Sal does say one thing is like, you guys, if I heard it right, he's like, you guys do what you need to do or something like that.
Yeah, he's like, do what you got to do.
Yeah. He knows that like, the shit has hit the fan. But I think at that moment, that's when it's so obvious that the inequality is there and it will forever be there, and you just fuck it and you throw throw it through the window, I don't know.
You do have the next scene where he kind of explains a little bit. He's like, man, the insurance is going to cover it anyway. So it's like, I don't think he was trying to destroy Sal's livelihood, but maybe he was. I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, I think, is it him boiling over as a character because of this moment? Or is it more calculated because his performance is so like mild-mannered most of the time, or like the way that he handles things is pretty low-key, at least compared to bugging out, right? And there's this tone like coming out, the body language coming off that like doesn't seem as fired up as anybody else in that mob, yet he's the one to throw the trash can through, and it felt calculated to me.
The second time I watched it, it felt a little bit more like he felt guilty because there's very much like the blocking. Like as soon as everything hits the fan, Mookie is standing next to Sal. He's on their side of the line, so to speak, that's been drawn. Mm-hmm. And he very consciously walks away and joins the other side of things.
Right.
Because I think he realizes now he's in the system that's perpetuating the same thing over and over and over again.
By asking this question, I don't know if maybe this is what you're getting at. Is there a possibility that he threw it through in order to distract the mob? Like where the mob is going to kill Sal and Pino?
No, I've heard Spike Lee actually shoot that down.
Okay. That was not my original intention or my thinking, but like since Justin was asking, I was like, is that kind of what Justin was thinking?
That's not what I was thinking necessarily.
Well, I think it's very much like the mob is there. All it needs is a spark to ignite it. And I think Mookie wanted to ignite the spark to start the mob. It wasn't, and Sal's was just the place to do it because they were there. If the police had killed them in front of the Korean store, it may be different. He knows that if he does this, a riot will start, and that's what he wants to happen because the only way any change is going to happen is through, a riot.
Violence.
Yeah, that's what I mean by calculation, I think.
Okay. So yeah, I think he definitely wanted to ignite something. I don't know that it has anything to do with his personal relationship with Sal. I imagine it does, but I don't think, based on the ending conversation, that like ruining Sal's livelihood was like what was on his mind right then, because he's got insurance anyway. The main thing that matters is someone was just murdered here.
Yeah, and this is the only justice
get this crowd fired up. Yeah.
I did like the scene with the Koreans. Like they've burned down Sal's, and then like they're looking for another place to burn, and the Korean's like, "I'm black," and it's a very interesting sequence, I think, too, where he talks him out of burning his place too.
Yeah, for sure. That one, having only seen the film once, some of that hasn't stuck as much as some of the other things, so you guys might have to answer that one.
Well, here's what's interesting, I guess, about the Korean couple. Someone like bugging out, he'll go into Sal's and he'll berate them for not having African American photos on the wall alongside Frank Sinatra and whatnot, right? But then he'll go to like the Korean store and he'll just say a bunch of racist stuff to them. So it's like there's no one who's not racist here.
Yeah, everyone's racist, which I will say I love that little section. And I think it's when Spike Lee and John Turturro, Mookie and Pino are arguing, and we kind of get them what they are saying, like, I think, like, sort of mentally to each other, like, basically all of these racist terms they can think of and, like, mean things to say about each other. But we get that scene, not only we get each one of them saying it about the other one, but then we also get, like, the Korean family saying it about the Puerto Ricans, I think. And the Puerto Ricans are saying it about somebody, and the black people are saying it about the Italians. I like that section a lot. And I think that section is one of the examples of like how much energy this movie has and how it just moves and moves and moves. Like it's 2 hours long, but it does not feel like it to me. And I love all of those little flourishes like that.
Yeah, agreed. So there's a kind of a meta thing to this. We talked about him throwing the trash can. Do you think Spike Lee casts himself in this role in a meta way, and the movie is Spike Lee's proverbial trash can, like by making this movie and by like this is him throwing the trash can through the window?
Yes. I think that, yeah.
Yeah. This movie is the proverbial trash can through the window for the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think it's funny that, like, not funny, I think it's interesting that some characters actually kind of represent the points of view that we are introduced to at the end of the movie, like the Malcolm X, Martin Luther King approaches. Like the mayor is very much about the Martin Luther King approach, right? Love always, all the time, forgive everything. But then you'll have Bugging Out, who's very much not that way. You know, he's very upfront in your face, very much kind of representing like the Malcolm X approach. And then you'll have Mookie somewhere in between.
Yeah.
And his soul is essentially like, is he going to go more towards the mayor, or is he going to go more towards Bugging Out? I think, and I think ultimately it's the Bugging Out approach that he takes. But ultimately, that other point of view is still valid.
I think it's still there. I think one action doesn't necessarily condemn him to one way or the other.
That's kind of what I get from the love and hate, and then the Malcolm X and the Martin Luther King quotes at the end. You know, like Martin Luther King is love, you know, and I don't necessarily think Malcolm X is hate, but he offers up a different approach than loving, right? So I think it's this balance, like, and knowing when to use both of them. So it's knowing when to use violence in defense at the right time, and knowing when to love and forgive and move, you know, like be better. And I think that's what the movie is trying to say, and that's what Mookie's walking that fine line between, you know. That's kind of how I felt.
Yeah, I think he's also young and developing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know,
he hasn't settled down the man he's going to be yet.
Yeah, and I think he's got these sort of sides tugging at him, which, you know, is evident in working for the white Italian guys and, you know, being their pizza delivery person or whatever, and having to go run errands for them. And then also being friends with everybody out there and being friends with Bugging Out, who's like on the other side. And I do want to talk a little bit about the opening credits.
I've been waiting for this since
so
you
cool.
texted about it yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, like, I kind of got hooked into this movie immediately because I really love these opening credits, which is it, I meant to go back and watch them again, but is it his girlfriend's who's dancing in the beginning? Or is some of it his sister, or is it all his girlfriend?
I felt like it was all the girlfriend, but I
think it's all the girlfriend.
Okay, that's what I thought too. I didn't go back and double check. But I mean, I love the energy that those start with. That starts with, and like the whole "Fight the Power" song going the whole time over the credits, and her just like kind of dancing and sweating, and like there's almost like a being forced to dance, and her being exhausted and just kind of like dancing and dancing. Not necessarily, you know, for the joy of dancing vibe to it. I don't know if you guys feel that.
It's almost like she's angry dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. Very, very cool opening credits. I like how it's like all red, like the red light on the wall behind her.
Yeah. And
this looks so cool.
Yeah. And I think I spent some time thinking about these opening credits are so bold. Like, what do they mean? Like, what do they add to the story? Why these opening credits? And, Mike, I think when you had started watching the film last night, you had texted me and were like, wow, I forgot about these opening credits or something like that, right?
Yeah, essentially is what I did, basically. I was like, I forgot how cool these were or something.
Yeah, so that's why I was like, I think I have a theory on it, and I've been thinking about it, and it's not like an amazing theory, but I feel like that is representative of Mookie's mindset it might even be a dream of Mookie's, because we do start at the beginning of the day, like after he's woken up.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially it's Mookie's mindset of like, fight the power, this like rebellion theme song playing while his girlfriend is dancing. You know, his girlfriend's on his mind. But then like there's everything, like I think that there's so much red in it because it's so like, it's this buildup of like anger and other things that I think are a little more underneath the surface for him, but they're there. And I think there's one of the shots where the wall is sort of red behind his girlfriend dancing, and then the red light kind of goes out, and there's the wall, and like the background basically turns black and white where the red light isn't hitting, which I felt like it was kind of this black and white viewpoint creeping in to him, where he is like in the middle, as we've talked about, you know, like kind of between both viewpoints. But I think there's this sort of black and white creeping in from the edges as this, and that's what like the anger reveals and whatnot. But I kind of took it as this like weird dream sequence credits. I don't know if you guys felt that at all.
I mean, I didn't, but I don't think you're wrong. I just thought they were cool and stylish.
They are
Yeah,
definitely.
I didn't put as much thought into it as you did. I did think the set, it kind of looked like she was dancing in front of the Cosby house.
Oh,
to
yeah?
a certain extent. Yeah, I don't know. That was just what occurred to me. But
I think just a lot of houses look like that in cities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just that brownstone sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was what I was thinking about those opening credits. It was like, it's either Mookie's dream or just a view into Mookie's mindset.
Right. Well, hey, who am I to tell you no?
Yeah. I don't know.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. All right. Does anybody have anything else they want to touch on and do the right thing before we go?
I wanted to throw in something really quick, and we haven't really talked about it much, but Samuel L. Jackson in this is kind of the narrator / DJ, which I really liked. And I think there's touches of this throughout the whole movie, but because there's always stuff going on in the background, and I really enjoyed that. But there's one particular moment where Mookie is delivering food to Samuel L. Jackson's character, and gets waylaid by another character, and he's like talking to him. But in the background, you see Samuel L. Jackson like from his window in the radio room, like waving at him, like he's like, "I'm hungry," like trying to get his attention to bring the food in. And I think that extra layer of like stuff going on, and there's always stuff in the background happening that you can look at and see, and it makes the movie feel like a city or feel like a little block, you know, and it makes it feel alive. And I really like that.
I like his like broadcast the morning after like the riot and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he's like, what is it that he says? He's like, "I saw it, but I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I saw." Like he just kind of like states the same thing in two different ways for like a couple things. That's really cool.
Yeah. I think he's really great in it, and I really all the cast is really good. I think special shout out. I think the mayor, Ossie Davis, is fantastic.
He's so charming.
It's such a charming, likable character. And Mother Sister, played by Ruby Dee, I want to call out as well. I like her, and I like their sort of little love story that evolves throughout this movie. Which is really nice. John Turturro is great. Everybody's just kind of like really perfectly cast, and just really feels like a fully fleshed out character, and like is super fascinating, and just kind of they all kind of pop on camera, and
they all look like real faces too. Like,
yes,
there's no overly pretty actors. They're all just real people.
Yeah, agreed.
For sure. Yeah, I love the three guys just giving each other shit in front of the red wall all day that just sit there. And I love that they, like, I find it pretty funny that they spend like the whole day complaining about like the Korean people like owning a business, but they also just sit in front of a red wall the whole day and like talk about everybody around them or whatever. I love all these little eccentric, like fleshed out characters like that have that deeper stuff to them. It feels so alive. This movie.
It's a rich tapestry of a movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am a massive fan of it. And I had heard that it was good, and I knew that, you know, it was probably going to be Spike Lee's best movie, because that's kind of the general consensus, and it was. But I don't know that I expected to like just really enjoy it from start to finish as much as I did. Like I kept waiting for something to kind of rub me the wrong way, or or go too far, but I don't think it ever does. I think it's just like really quite perfect.
Yeah. It just goes right where it needs to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Instead of too far.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to talk about the final confrontation, or not confrontation, but that final ending scene between Mookie and Sal, like where they throw money at each other, like, or have we covered all that?
Well, I like that sort of represents the conflict between Mookie still, because he does say, you know, my day rate's only $250, and like basically like you're making the point, you gave me $500, and he like he hands him back like $200 bills and says, like, I owe you $50. And it's kind of this moral like standpoint. But then when he walks away, he picks the money up and takes it with him.
Well, it's because Sal knows he has no choice. He's got no money. Like, well, it's like, because Sal sums it up. He's like, go, take your $500. You don't need anything else. That $500, he's got you made forever, or something like that. Like, no worries, everyone. He's got $500. You know, like, so basically he's just rubbing it in like, hey, you're never going to make any, like, this is crap work. This isn't going to improve your life at all. You're out here getting money, getting paid, or whatever it is. You know what I mean? But like, really, you got $500. You're unemployed. You're raising a kid. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it is. Like, yeah, he had righteous anger, sure, but Sal may rebuild. He may be able to keep going. But what's Mookie gonna do? Where did that get him? I think is what Sal's point of view is. Like,
well, did it get him anything? Like, what is the result of throwing the trash can through it? Like, Sal has to rebuild. He's got insurance money. Huh?
Starting the riot. He wanted to start the riot.
Well, I mean, like, what is the result, like, the day after? So he started the riot. Is he any further or closer to his goal?
Right.
Did
that's
the
what I'm
riot
saying.
get him anything? Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I think that's what Sal's saying to him, where he's like,
yeah.
That's why he throws him the money. He knows he's going to accept it because he just got fired and he's broke. He's not going to turn down the money leaving on the ground, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sal's going to have the insurance coming in. So I think a lot of that conversation is just like, yeah, you acted out in anger and now you're fired and now you got to go do something else and nothing really has changed.
But
you got $500, big man. Is kind of like Sal's point of view on the whole thing. And I think Mookie's got to walk away with the lesson of being like, what can create change? Where am I headed?
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense to me.
Like, I don't get the impression that Sal, he'll probably be up and running in business in like 2 years, you know? I think Sal's doing pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's an interesting thing.
Well, is it in any way not necessarily a condemnation of Spike Lee's actions in the riot, but is Spike Lee, the writer-director, calling that sort of action out of like, does it make sense for them to have rioted and done this? Like, what good did it do? Is that the purpose?
Yeah. I don't know what Spike Lee's saying, but I think there's, as the audience member, what I take away from it is there's a sense of like, there's times when righteous anger is necessary, and then there's times where you have to take a step back and then realize it's like, even if it's necessary, even if you did the right thing, you still have to live together. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like one riot's going to change the world, but baby steps. Mookie may be on his way to becoming a more angry guy, or he may be chilling out. But, based on Spike Lee's current attitudes towards things, I can't help but wonder if Mookie is more just going to get angrier as he gets older.
Yeah.
Yes, certainly Mookie, I think, is a surrogate for Spike Lee in general in his view. And so if we follow that, I think Mookie gets angrier.
Yeah.
That's fair. And not unjustified,
For sure. Well, cool.
Cool. So is that our review of Do the Right Thing?
Yeah. That is all I have.
Cool. Well, let's go ahead and move into choosing our next Casually Criterion.
Yeah, let's do it. So we'll each be picking a movie. So there will be 3 movie choices, and that poll will be up on our Twitter account. Check the show notes for a link to it. By the time you're hearing this, that poll will be up, and you can go vote and choose our next movie. And Mike, what is the theme for this poll?
All right. So yesterday, as we record this, was Mother's Day. So we chose the theme Mothers.
Yay! Mother's Day, right?
Whatever. Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Mother's Day.
Yeah.
So Justin, what film? You want me to go first?
You're gonna make me go first again? I went first. News on the March, and I went first for the review. So I see someone else goes first.
You always throw it to me, so you're the last person that I was thinking about. Okay, Chris.
Yes, I can go. So my choice, based on Mother's Day, is Brief Encounter by David Lean.
Oh, I had this on a blind spot once and it didn't win, so I hope it wins this time.
It's about I haven't seen it, but like it's about a conflicted mother that I believe has an affair. So I haven't seen it. Yeah. Well, I mean, that was what was in the synopsis. So
still, I just figured she had a brief encounter. But that could be
brief
anything.
Encounter with a hedgehog, for all I knew.
Yeah.
That'd be a unique movie, and I would watch it. But yeah, so that's my pick. I know it's been picked before, so hopefully this second go round, everybody's wisened up, or maybe it's because I've picked it. You know, I have more fans.
Yeah, probably.
Mike, what was your pick?
Let's see. So on the theme Mothers or Mother's Day, whichever, I am choosing a film that is a kind of a weird choice, maybe, but I'm going to go for it anyway. And that is a film about two women in Japan a long time ago. And one of them's married to a soldier, and the other one is the mother of the soldier. And the soldier has gone off to war and hasn't been back for many years. The wife and the mother are left to live together in Japan during wartime, but the wife is young and wants to live, and the mother wants to keep her there so she won't be alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that is Onibaba.
Nice.
That's another one we've picked before on the list.
Yeah. So hopefully this time, one of these two wins, unless Justin has a cooler one.
Well, I could pick one that's been on the list before, I think, or I could go with something totally different.
Go with one that's been on the list before. Stick with this theme.
Are you sure you want that?
It's up to you, man. It's your choice.
Okay, I'm going to pivot, actually. I'm going to go with a film that I actually watched pretty recently, but I really want to watch it again because I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoy this director's films, and that director is Lee Chang-dong, who did Burning that we reviewed on the show, and I think we were all big fans of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he has a film on Criterion Collection called Secret Sunshine.
Oh, awesome.
That I really liked a lot, and I would be totally down to watch and dissect a little bit deeper with you guys. And basically, from what I remember about this movie, the main character is a widow, and she's kind of a former piano prodigy / like piano teacher, and she moves to this new town with her son and is trying to take care of him and live life in this new town. And that's as much synopsis as I feel like given, I think. But very good movie.
It is. All right answers here.
Totally.
There's not a front runner really either that I can pick.
I bet
off.
Brief Encounter wins.
Yeah, that's kind of the most recognizable, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's usually the case.
That's kind of why I didn't want to pick the other one. Did you guys have any other options that you want to give like brief honorable mentions to?
No, for some reason I honed in on Onibaba.
Okay.
I had other options, but I'll save them for later.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll give a few that I was thinking about. The one that I thought about that has been on the poll a couple of times is Tree of Life, which has a very powerful mother role from Jessica Chastain in it.
Indeed.
So that was one. Another one I thought about was Brand Upon the Brain, the Guy Madden film.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that would have been fun.
Has a very weird mother sort of character in it. I'll leave that there. And then the other one I thought about was the Blue from the Three Colors trilogy.
Oh, yeah.
Which is about Juliette Binoche plays a mother who's lost her husband and a daughter in
I keep forgetting
car accident.
that the Three Colors trilogy are now in the Criterion Collection. Because back when I first saw them, they weren't.
Yeah. Well, same in the sense that I saw them before they were in Criterion, but I was so excited that they were coming to Criterion that I haven't forgotten.
You never forgot.
Yeah, I bought them immediately.
I wonder if, like, when we do those, we should do them all like in a row or something. Like, we haven't really talked about or done any trilogies except for the Samurai trilogy.
Yeah, which we did all in one episode. Trilogy.
Yeah, those.
Yeah, I think it's almost like that would have to be like the entire episode would be maybe like a review of the whole box set or something, and that'd be like the whole episode. But maybe not. Maybe we just do 3 episodes in a row, one film each. I could be into that.
Maybe we should just milk it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's milk it. I like it.
Well, right now is the time to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we won't be doing Three Colors trilogy for sure because the 3 choices on the Criterion poll for next week's episode are Onibaba, chosen by Mike, Secret Sunshine, chosen by me, Justin, and Brief Encounter, chosen by Chris. So go vote.
Please.
Whew.
Okay.
That does it for this episode, right?
I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for listening. And then, of course, as always, thank you, Jake Wagner-Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bobscotch.
Stay tuned to this channel. Our next episode will be one of those movies we just talked about.
Now, whoever wins, go vote.
Yeah, power's in your hands. Vote. Go vote now.
That's right. And remember to go vote on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Casual Cinecast. The voting is on Twitter, but you can follow us other places to get to the poll. Also check the show notes for the poll. And then, of course, you can also email us with any questions or whatever at casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
Thanks so much for listening, guys, and we will talk to you next time. Stay safe out there.
And that's the truth, Ruth.
The triple truth, Ruth.
What?
It's just the truth.
He says that's the double truth, and he's always upping it.
Yeah,
Also,
each time he says truth, Ruth, it was like double, triple, and then it was it was a quintessential truth, Ruth. Something
also,
like that.
for the record, Jules and Jim does have that 360 shot, like that passes time. It just wasn't the one you were thinking about.
Yeah.
I think the shot he was talking about wasn't passing time shot. It was just the shot where they're in the record store. And
they do a 360. But yes. Yeah. Anyways, just for the record, there was a 360 shot in Jules and Jim.
Yeah.
All right, I'm stopping.